Your worship, it is now 6:30.
All right, with that note, then let's get this meeting going. I would like to call to order the regular council meeting here on Monday, January 16th. We are on Zoom and airing through Facebook. We're back to Zoom simply because of the weather conditions and making sure that all members of council can be in attendance. So if we jump right into it, if anyone does have any questions though about anything on the agenda this evening, they can actually join through Zoom, or as well, they can email pnopper@townofstanders.ca. I'm sure Mr. Nopper will put it in the comments of the Facebook feed as well. To start, we'll record a record of attendance. It's good to see that all members of council were able to attend. So it takes a lot more to do roll call now, checking 9 different councilors, but it's good to have all members of council here. Before we begin, I just want to recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskotomo people. And now at this time, I'll be looking for an approval of the agenda. Could I have a mover as the agenda is circulated? And you'll have to speak because I might not be able to see you all. I do see Councillor Heenan's hand and I saw Councillor Hurdles. If you're not up on my Hollywood Squares, here, I'll switch my view so that way I can see everybody. Just because that's going to be ongoing. There we go. All right, so we've got a mover and a seconder. I do want to make, I'll call it a friendly amendment. I'm going to declare a conflict of interest on it, but when you get under planning and economic development motions, you'll see that there's number 2 is to go to third and final reading, and the third motion is actually to sign the development agreement. The appropriate order would be to reverse those 2. Okay, so at that particular time, you would do the development agreement and then go to third and final reading. Is that correct, Mr. Nopper? Yeah, perfect. All right, so that's a friendly amendment. Is there any other changes to the agenda? Okay, then I will call the question. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, that agenda has been carried unanimously. Disclosure of conflict of interest, as I mentioned before, I will be declaring one myself on under the Compass Housing, the 2 motions related to that. So Deputy Mayor Akaji, at that time, as always, I'll ask you to take over the meeting and I'll recuse myself. Is there anyone else this evening that would like to declare a conflict of interest? Okay, I'm seeing none. If anything does arise throughout the meeting, you can let me know at that particular time. At this point, we're going to switch right into presentations, and we do have at least one of the presenters online, but this would be for Chris Evans and Rick Turner, which is Evansland Development Inc. Stonewall Place proposal, which is on Mowat Drive. To put that for all of council's perspective, as you come out of the Bar Road, you'll see that there's actually a little bit of clearing going on right there. That would be the parcel of land that this presentation would be related to, but I'm sure there might be some visual to go along, maybe Mr. Nopper. If not, we can get some after. So at this time, if you'd like to let them in, we can have the presentation.
Sorry, your worship is just fighting me here. I'm going to see if Mr. Turner, you do have the floor to council if you'd like to unmute. If you want to turn on your camera, you have that so as well. Mr. Turner, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. That's perfect. So I'm just going to share the screen for you so I can share the document you asked me to. So just give me one second.
Thank you.
So Mr. Turner, the screen is shared. You have the floor to council. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Your worship, members of Common Council, my name is Rick Turner. I'm with Hughes Surveys and Consultants, and presenting on behalf of Evansland Development Limited. Mr. Evans was going to see if he could join in on the air. If he was having any trouble, he did ask me to pass on his regrets. There's 4 areas that I'd like to give some comments on. The first one being just some of the features that we see in the Stonewall development. The second is the person of the reason and purpose of the submission and this presentation. Third, I'd like to speak very briefly on housing ownership challenges. And the final and most important, I would say, would be the target market that will be pursued by the developer. So getting into topic one, stone wall development features. The proposal is to develop 28 affordable housing units on a proposed public street with municipal services. These units would be developed for home ownership, not for rental. The plan includes 2 future streets that are proposed at the tail end of the development, and they will provide access to the adjoining properties. Our hopes with the provision for the future streets, which would be turned over to the town, that may encourage the further development of the adjacent properties. Our plan also has preservation of green space along the boundaries of the property, which would be controlled through covenants. A copy of those covenants has been submitted to the town for information. Development will include the land for public purposes, which you see at the bottom of the plan. And that would be developed in this case, not just reserved, but developed to be a bit of a park-like feature. Very likely there'd be a stormwater attenuation in that and some walking paths, benches around that. So, and again, this is conceptual at this point. Another option for the stormwater control, which doesn't show on this plan, but we're looking at the attenuation pond down on Champlain, one owned by the town. And if there was capacity that could be used there, there would be a probability of being able to add 2 housing units to this development. If we could add 2 units, that again is one of the things that will help us on the affordability issue. So the purpose of the submission, this is being submitted at this time for council's information, make them aware that the developer intends to develop the property, affordable housing for home ownership. That's the target market. And I'll speak a little more to that in a minute. So the developer would like council to consider providing a cash incentive that would help the developer achieve maximum affordability on the final price for the units. The, excuse me, third part, housing ownership challenges. There's a demand for all types of housing, and in particular affordable housing throughout the province. As I understand it, St. Andrews is very interested in attracting new residents, especially candidates to fill lower and medium income positions for jobs within the community. And that is something that many communities are competing for. So that's sort of top of mind. The demand for affordable housing is challenged due to there's been increased costs for servicing land, increased costs for the construction of the roads, stormwater attenuation for developments, again, is an added cost. So any contribution that might be provided through the town would help on the affordability, and more affordable, more likely that we're going to get that target market, which that's the item I'll briefly address now. So the target market is young families or individuals considering St. Andrews as their home and residents of St. Andrews or the surrounding area that are facing challenges as they try to achieve home ownership because of these rising costs and inflation. So the second topic or the second comment I'd like to make to that is you have had some success with rental units being developed or have been or are under development, which that's good. It's good for the community. But people who rent tend to be more transient and can easily move on. They're not so tied to the community. Providing an affordable ownership model allows people to make roots in the community, maybe begin families, they have children, children have friends, and we know how that goes. So a contribution by the town towards the cost of the proposed municipal infrastructure. That's what we would be looking for. And anything that will help get the price of those units down, the final units, that will certainly help attract that target market. The cost for servicing the property, that would be the road and services to service the units shown on the plan. We've had an independent engineer work something out. It's approximately, round figures, $1 million project. Anything that the town can contribute towards that to help ease that cost, that would be very, very helpful. So, and we're looking at that contribution being towards servicing the road costs to help reduce the final cost of the housing. We will be making a formal application for the approval of Stonewall Place subdivision. And what we're waiting on now, we've submitted something to the planning office and the town to just look the plans over, see if they see any issues that we should address. Once we have some feedback on that, the formal submission would be made. Now, where this is not yet an approved development, what we're putting forward to council is if we can have the opportunity to work with staff, come up with some kind of a more detailed proposal with some figures, then we could, or we would like to come back to council, see if we could get a conditional commitment. The conditional commitment being, look, we can commit perhaps a certain amount of money, and that is conditional on getting yourself through the process and coming out with something that's ready to go to a developer's agreement and start the heavier work on the ground. So in summary, I've given you an outline of the Stonewall development features, fully serviced lots, public street, green space around the development. Second purpose of the submission is to pursue development incentives towards the cost on the municipal infrastructure. Third item was the housing ownership challenges. There's a lot of competition in communities for people, and through housing, that is a very robust way to achieve that desire for more people in the community, especially people we've covered off in my fourth item was the target market. People to fill some of the lower and medium income jobs throughout the town, which I understand it's quite critical at this point. It's not good to hear that people are closing business through normal business hours because they can't get somebody maybe to wait on tables, whatever. So if there's any questions, I could certainly try to address them. I would hope the council could perhaps pass a referral tonight to send this through to staff so that we could have some further dialogue should you see some merit in what we're proposing. And thank you for your time, and thank you for this being a Zoom meeting this evening, because I was going to travel to St. Andrews, but I can't say I was looking forward to it today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Turner, for the presentation. It was good to get that before council. I will open the floor to questions. Before I do, just I guess a process confirmation to Mr. Knopper and Mr. Spear. Right now, this lot is zoned what, Mr. Spear, Mr. Knopper? Or Mr. Gopin's also on there,
service residential. Mhm.
And what would it require rezoning to?
I think, well, go ahead, Mr. Gopin.
Thanks, Mr. Spear, your worship. So duplexes are allowed in the serviced residential zone. So I did a very quick review of this when it was sent in, and nothing jumped out at me as needing further approvals other than the subdivision, but we would do a more thorough review at the time of a formal application.
So we would have to have a subdivision agreement. Is that what it would be? Like go through the process of that? Okay, and then
Especially since there's a public road.
and just for the public and for new counselors, could you explain a little bit about what the subdivision process would look like?
So the subdivision process and the agreement are predominantly about infrastructure and agreements around who is creating it, who is owning it, and there is a public street proposed here. Another thing that goes into a subdivision agreement is land for public purposes. So there's a requirement that 8% be there, and I did see some on that, the pond and kind of walking area that would count. So we'd have to look closer at that. There is PAC does review it, and they give an opinion on the street and the land for public purposes. That's kind of their purview. But ultimately, if there's a public street and council is taking it over, then you definitely want an agreement. And there's a few other matters that can be dealt with in that agreement as well. Things like performance bonds and there's I guess nitty-gritty kind of details, but it's a bit of a process. It's not quite as involved as a rezoning, but certainly it would be coming back to council for review. PAC would have a chance to give their opinion on it, and development officers like myself and Judy Hartford would be looking closely at it.
And then we would also have a motion for any funding related to the project and approval of a development agreement as well. Is that correct? That would be kind of the process around it for it to happen, and assuming there's no variances as well, which would obviously put PAC a little bit more involved with it as well. Okay, I've got a couple more questions directly from Mr. Turner, but I will open the floor first. Any questions from member of council? I see Councillor Harlan.
Thanks, Mr. Turner, for the overview. And I realize it's high level at this point, but I am curious as to what you consider to be affordable housing. So what do you anticipate, or is it even possible to say what these units would be going for?
Well, I've had several, discussions with Mr. Evans on that. We're pretty certain of the development cost on the street and things like that. Street and services, looked at contracts that have been awarded, so that one's nailed down. Looking at the development of the homes, there's options, panelized construction. There's several ways to approach it, and it always comes back to the one item that's hard to get nailed down is the labor cost on that. Material costs they've receded a little bit, so we're in better shape now than we would have been 6 months or a year ago. The hopes are that these units could sell for the right side of $300,000, so less than $300,000. Very hard to put an exact number on that, and on $1 million project, depending on what the town put forward on that, there's that could be several $1,000s per unit off of that final price. But not a direct answer because pretty hard to do at this point.
Oh, I appreciate that. Can I have one more question?
You certainly can.
Thanks. So in a development, and I'm one of the new councillors, so I'm very new to all of this and have a ton of questions, but in a development like this, so if the units were initially sold, say for 300,000, what would prevent people from just flipping them or turning them over if the market was right? Like,
I suppose there is a possibility that someone could do that. Although if they did sell the unit, if they were staying in town, buying another upgrading, I think you're still achieving what you'd like to with creating more units and getting more residents in the town. But obviously, once the property is conveyed or transferred to somebody, they are at their liberty to do what they want.
So somebody, sorry, so somebody could buy it and then rent it, et cetera, et cetera.
I don't know about the rental. Maybe that's something that could be controlled through the covenants, because certainly not the intention here. The intention is far from that.
Council Harlan, there is some things like tools in the development agreement that council themselves could put some terms and conditions associated with probably the grant that's associated with it would be the major mechanism, or the subdivision agreement, I'm sure as well. I don't know if that would give us tools, Mr. Gopin, or not for any concerns, like Airbnb, for example.
Yeah, I think the grant would be, subdivision agreements are fairly specific. So the grant would, I think, give council some, it's kind of an open-ended agreement between yourselves and the developer. And really the only way I could think of ensuring affordability or that it stays as a certain type of ownership model would be covenants. And when McAdams sold those dollar lots, they put covenants on them about how they could be resold and when and things like that. That's a pretty different context, as they were being sold for $1 and they were town-owned land. So you're kind of getting into a legal questions there, and I certainly would not want to advise any further there. But there are some options, and if you do a grant, then I think it gives you more control over that.
Yeah, and I guess that point, if someone was buying 4 units, that's probably not what the intention is. Like when the subdivision was built, people were only allowed to buy 1 lot. And that was to stop that exact thing of flipping it and making profit. I see Councillor Heenan's hand.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council and Mr. Turner. Just one question, and Councillor Hurdle can probably back me up on this. I don't see a $300,000 property being available to low-income families. I don't see them being able to qualify for that particular type of a mortgage. I mean, you can just do it on a rule of thumb, but I'm not convinced this is going to be for lower. It may be middle to upper, but lower, I'm not convinced of that. Thank you, Your Worship.
No, it's a fair comment, but just, obviously as we work through developments, it's pretty hard to build a unit for $300,000 nowadays. If you go, and I won't say any business names, but if you go to a prefab home, you're not going to get one for under 300,000, to be honest, right now. So it's a battle, and I feel for families out there, but to get a $200,000 unit, based on talking to 6-7 different developers, it's not out there anymore. It really isn't, unless you get into something like a tiny home or something like that. And that's a whole different looking subdivision, obviously, at that point. But it's a good comment for sure. Any other questions? Councilor Michelle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Taylor. Just quickly on the future streets. I like the forward thinking. Just wondering if you've had any conversations with the adjacent property owners where the future streets might go, or basically.
Yeah, it's our intention to actually approach the adjoining owners as we start through the planning process. They will be contacted, I presume, through the advertisement required to go to PRAC, but we would like to speak with them before we even get to that stage. So that would be sometime in the very near future, and just show them what's proposed, get their feedback. If they have any concerns or issues, then it's something we try to address before we get too far into the process. If I could, Your Worship, in regard to the previous question on ownership, we've had some discussions on that. And the thoughts were if it was a young couple coming to town, one of them could get a job that's, reasonably good, that mid-range type of job. And in order to help with the ownership, the two of them could be working mid-range jobs. Maybe one of them is working at Hudson or has a good job through the agriculture industry. And the second, maybe not being the breadwinner, is still going to be able to fill perhaps a lower end job. So there's been some thought on that. And the $300,000 figure, I was reluctant to put a number out there, but we're trying to get below the $300,000 number. And Mr. Evans is working very diligently on that. And he's got some ideas. I mean, we're going to go with a slab construction, which will help save some cost. Looking at panelized construction. Labor's the only thing that's a little bit up in the air. And there's certainly some ideas we have on that, but they're not set in stone at this point. But I did want to get those comments out there that the question that come up, yes, it's something, one of the things that's top of mind. Thank you.
So Michelle, follow-up question?
Thank you. So if the road doesn't go anywhere, back to my original question, would that affect like on Rose Lane, we got into an issue where the road was too long, and maybe Mr. Spear can speak to this. The road was too long and needed a turnaround. Would that affect if there was no future roads, Mr. Spear, would that change the way the road would have to be constructed?
No, that T shape at the end, even without the future road, still qualifies as a cul-de-sac. So we had this discussion last week with the planners, and at least at the high level, it looks like it meets other requirements of our subdivision bylaw.
Well, thank you. It looks like a great plan to me. Thank you, Mr. Spear and Mr. Turner.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Your worship,
So I guess, yep.
sorry, if I could just refer back to Mr. Gopen, because we actually had this discussion last week about income levels with the planners, because we kind of knew that figure beforehand in prior discussions with the proponent. And maybe he could just touch base on that, because we did a little bit of homework ourselves just to see who could afford a $300,000 home.
Yeah, happy to speak to that. And there's trying to talk too much about housing and data. I'll hold myself back. But there's a new methodology that I've started using, rather than using that kind of traditional 30% of income, any median income, anything less than that is considered affordable. It breaks it down into 5 different categories. So very low, which is typically kind of what you think of as your social development housing. So heavily subsidized, low income, moderate income, average income, and high income. And based on the most recent census, which is pretty recent, 2020, I think this around $300,000, that's going to be in the moderate to average probably price range. You're looking at maybe around 70,000 a year. That's the salary for someone to be able to afford a $300,000 home, and obviously new construction, hopefully you're not spending too much on maintenance and things like that. And with so that's I think where that's falling about, to get into that low income range, which is it does seem like that's where the greatest need is in St. Andrews, but there is need at other levels as well. That you would really want to get down to around that 200,000 level. So we're definitely in the moderate income range. I think moderate to average with what's being proposed, and maybe with there might be some other subsidies that could come from the province, or there might be some other options the developer could explore. There might be a way to get it down to that low income threshold, which again, I would say is around 200,000. It's a particular challenge. You know, I've been working on this for a long time, and it's very challenging for the private market to do affordable housing because there's the need to make a profit, and it's very hard. So partnerships are very important to see that happen, and obviously the town has done that a little bit. So yeah, I'm happy to talk, you know, more in meetings about these things. If council wants us to talk further with developers, we can have those conversations.
Thank you very much. Just for all of council's information, in the 2022 budget, we did pass basically a budget line item for housing. We have not spent the entirety of those funds. However, we are approaching the end of those funds. And really, it's coming down now to opportunity cost. If you do one, you probably can't afford to do the other, is how close it is now. So we will have a follow-up conversation. I think what council will need, though, is to know what that number is from the developer of what they're looking for town support. And what's very helpful is when Mr. Spear will forecast what the potential tax revenue is. So you'll get to see what the expected payback is on the investment. In some cases, we've had investments that have paid back as quick as 3 years. Some of them have been 10 years. But we do get tax revenue since it is a private development that will be coming into to the town of St. Andrews, you know, hopefully for the next 50 years, our project does go ahead. So unless the developer, Mr. Spear, has anything else, I think that would be council's next ask, is to know what amount. I see Councillor Hurdle's hand, but I think that would be something we need to know. And the other thing that I'll throw before I go to Councillor Hurdle is with Mr. Bourgeois' development, assuming the development agreement goes ahead later today, and then of course the potential for Passamaquoddy Lodge, adding another development there has to be a conversation amongst council to debate if it isn't worth looking at the traffic flow there to make sure. That's a lot of units in one area, and I think that needs to be discussed to make sure. I wasn't overly concerned to this point, but this is you know, you're adding this many more units. It's starting to be a lot, which the community needs, but they're all, without realizing it, that area became the high growth area for high density through private development. So it's all worth a conversation for you to have. Councillor Hurdle.
You kind of touched on that right on what I was going to ask as well. And thank you again, Mr. Turner, for your presentation. I was just curious about, because I can't tell from the design that you presented here, how far the entrance is to the development to the Bar Road. And I'm wondering if there's any consideration as I can tell by where the stormwater management system is that you can't mirror this. But I do have a bit of concern about how that would flow from a traffic perspective.
Yes, the offset between intersections is, well, it's in excess of 100 feet or in excess of 30 meters. I know that if I go to the City of St. John bylaws, they called for a minimum of 30 meters in offset to intersections. That is something that we have looked into.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just on that note, Councillor Hurdle, staff has also looked at sewage to make sure with all these units coming in, and there was no concerns expressed from our engineers on the capacity of the system. So it looks a check the box for that one, that's for sure. So does that make sense to you, Mr. Spear, to maybe meet with the developer, find out what that looks like and what the anticipated value is? Because I'm making the assumption on council that in order to give a grant, you really do need to have a rough idea of what these units are going to cost. Because, and I know that that's not the intention, but to get a grant and then they end up being $500,000 each, I don't think that's something council would even consider. So I think we need to get into the nitty gritty, and I know that's really hard to do, but operating on a worst case scenario might be the way to path forward. So at least council knows that it's hopefully under, but knows what the worst case might be. Mr. Spear, anything, comments to add on those?
No, just right back to you, your worship, that along the same lines. It is a little harder that as we've looked at these different units going across the town, that if it's just between the town and a private developer, it's harder for us to put a limit on the affordability of them. And writing it in is one thing, enforcing it is another. So that'll be a discussion with the proponent, what that mechanism might look like if council decides to proceed with it.
Perfect. Just making sure no further questions. Okay, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Mr. Turner, and if you want to pass on our gratitude to Mr. Evans as well. We appreciate these conversations. It is still the number one. We're going to go through strategic priorities as a new council, but currently, as of our mandate, it was the number one challenge. We've had some success, but the truth of the matter is, when you look at the housing study that Mr. Gopin actually was a leader on, for Charlotte County, we aren't even close to where we need to be as a region in order to meet the housing needs. So these looks, and it's very important because we are looking at other opportunities. It's important to know that there is multiple out there, which is a great thing for the community, and really appreciate your time and being well organized and a clear presenter tonight. So thank you once again. And again, please pass that on to Mr. Evans as well.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of the council and staff as well. I'll be sure to touch base with Mr. Spears as soon as possible, and some of the statistics that have been presented this evening. I'd like to have some further conversation on that information as well. Thanks again.
Perfect. Thank you. Look forward to the follow-up. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
All right, council, we're going to move into the approval of minutes. I always do this for the new councilors. This is something that we're required to do. And I always check first to see if anyone has any changes to any of the minutes, anything they noticed. Mr. Knopper does an incredible job at them. They're almost word for word. But does anyone have any changes this evening? We've got Councillor Blanchard.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just on the December 12th minutes, they were in the first presentation, sorry. So section E, presentations, it's the first section. And it actually says it lists the salaries, councillor salaries, a range of $136,072 to $18,339. So I think that's supposed to be 13,000 as opposed to 136,000.
No, I remember it as 100. I
That's
remember it as 136.
For council salaries, I mean, who am I to complain? But I think that's a little excessive.
All right, Mr. Knopper, do you know that change? Okay, thank you. Is that the only one, Councillor Blanchard?
That's the only one that I found. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So we're gonna just note that as part of the approval of that one. Thank you for that. There's nothing else. I'll fly through the first ones then. So the first ones are the minutes of the 22/12/05 regular council meeting on Monday, December 5th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Can I have a mover to accept those minutes? I've got Councillor Heenan, seconded by Councillor Blanchard. All in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and any opposed? Those have been carried. The next minutes are the 22/12/12 public hearing of objections to bylaw number 22-07 council remuneration on Monday, December 12th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Could I have a mover for those minutes? I've got the old councilors are quicker right now. Councillor Hurdle, seconded by Councillor Gumichel. All in favor of adopting those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, those have been carried. The next minutes are the minutes of the 22/12/12 special council meeting on Monday, December 12th, 2022, 6:55 p.m. We did note that Councillor Blanchard did update that Mr. Knopper has captured. So I will look for a mover to approve that with that change. I've got Councillor Heenan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Akaji. All in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? That has been also carried unanimously. And the last one are the minutes of the 22/12/15 special council meeting, which was the swearing in ceremony, which is Thursday, December 15th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Could I have a mover to approve those minutes? Got Councillor Harland and seconded by Councillor Bennett. I intentionally did that, sorry. All in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Those have been carried as well. So we do have some communications tonight. It is from Leslie LeBlanc, the co-chair of the Age Friendly Advisory Committee. She sent a letter and it kind of highlights some of the, I guess you could say, successes, a few of the initiatives that have been carried out in 2022. Want to read some of those out. Benches have been purchased and placed along the walking trails. The hop-on, hop-off bus purchased by Kingsbury is now owned by Huntsville Marine Science Center, so they're meeting with them. Bicycle racks have been purchased and distributed. Housing projects off Victoria Terrace and Bar Road are underway. More handicap parking designated. So some of these are things the town has done, but they have helped as part of their plan. Hiking trails extended and paved, outdoor exercise equipment purchased, bathroom proposed for the point area near exercise equipment, bike repair kits purchased and installed. AFC logo has been designed. Information regarding AFC initiatives printed in town newsletter. Stainless steel tables purchased for community kitchen in the arena. Monies applied for and received from the Healthy Community Project for more bike benches and racks. So we've also participated in community engagement projects, and the town continues to work with Coastal Link, Trail and Sortie on trail mapping and continued development. So our age-friendly plan is ongoing, so that's kind of proof of what we're doing. The committee submits to the town of St. Andrews that the project recommendations for consideration for the upcoming year are as follows. So they have $10,000 annually, and it was support for the bike rodeo put on by Vincent Massey Elementary School and the RCMP. Host a second day for the ages, providing an opportunity for the community to have input into AFC action plan and allowing our many new residents in St. Andrews to help shape our town's age-friendly future. 3, support a new recreation initiative in St. Andrews, which would be pickleball. 4, work with Huntsman Marine Science Center and support their initiative to transport citizens to and from activities using their small bus. And 5, continue to build the kitchen in the arena for community programming. So they have a lot on the go for $10,000. They do not need our approval on any of their initiatives. Is that correct? We hand that over, do we? Just for clarity to Mr. Spear, Mr. Knopper?
No, your worship, actually, they put it through the town hall because most of the assets belong to us. And as long as it kind of fits within the vision of council, we'll approve it. Or if it's something a little bit beyond that, we'll bring it to you.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate Leslie LeBlanc writing us that letter and talking about some of the initiatives that have been happening in the past and what they're looking at in the future. So I hope I didn't skim over that too fast, but I wanted to update people on a few of it. We're going to move now into the staff reports at this particular time. I will pass it over to our CAO, Chris Spear. The floor is yours.
Thank you, worship. With the start of the new year, the province has reset local governance across the board. We are pleased to welcome the 3 additional councillors to our chambers, or to the virtual chambers, I guess, tonight, as we proceed ahead with the new community structure. So from a local government update, the expanded community of St. Andrews has a population of 2,953 people and an overall residential tax base of 530 million. As part of the reform, ownership of the Bayside Community Hall is being transferred to the municipality and now will fall under council's jurisdiction. As of the writing of this report, our final budget has not been formally approved, although it has been submitted by the facilitator with recommended tax rates, which will likely be approved. For the ward of St. Andrews, the proposed tax rate is $14.28 per $100 of assessment, compared to $1.20 last year. And for the wards of Shamcook and Bayside, the combined rate will be 0.9667 cents per $100 assessment, compared to 91.65 cents last year. The 2 rates for Bayside and Shamcook include the provincial levy for roads. As of the budget, the utility rates have not been increased for these customers. There are several motions before council tonight as we ease into the new term. 2 motions are related to development that are important to the housing strategy prioritized by the original council members. Bridle Path International Inc. proposed a commercial and housing development at the corner of Princess Royal and Water Streets. The proponent has requested an exemption to the secondary municipal plan to build a 4-story complex. After direction from council, what you as council would deem acceptable, the developer has decided to withdraw their application, which needs to be approved by resolution. The other development for your consideration tonight is the proposed Compass Housing apartment building on the former Blue Moon property on Mowat Drive. We have already gone through 2 readings of the municipal plan amendment and rezoning bylaw. Before you is the development agreement between the developer and the town for your approval. And if received, you should proceed forward with 3rd reading of both of the other bylaws. To round out the Trail Advisory Committee, we're happy that Mark Howell has put his name for consideration. Although a relatively new member of the community, he brings a passion for trails and experience as a local volunteer to the new role on this committee. Last weekend, the new councillors got together with staff for orientation to go over the basics of local government 101 under the St. Andrews model. There's also an opportunity to attend longer sessions during the weekend of February 11th, presented by the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick. The sessions will expand on the earlier presentation and, as importantly, give members a chance to meet other elected officials from across the province. Staff has added an agenda item for consideration to refurbish the council chambers at a cost of approximately $10,000. This is to replace the assortment of chairs we have there, new microphones and cameras, and to clean up the tables. Under administration, with the mild winter experience to date, we have been benefiting from cost savings. Although it is too early to tell how long this will continue, it appears there are no storms in sight, which was true when I wrote this report, at the writing of this report. The recreation manager's position has hit some road bumps over the last few months, but we made an offer to a candidate. We anticipate having them part of the team in the spring. We are excited about the position and anticipate they will add a lot of value to the community in promoting recreation and events. January will be busy for senior staff planning for 2023 projects and programs, continuing the processes related to local government reform, and familiarizing ourselves with the strengths and concerns of the two new communities now part of the St. Andrews local government. In addition to the normal course of business, council will have to review many bylaws to see if they need to be amended to reflect the addition of the new wards. Currently, there is a bylaw put in place by the minister stating the current bylaws only apply to the original St. Andrews. This past December was especially busy with both the traditional Christmas events as well as the National Men's Junior Hockey Team being in the community and participating in a public event. There was a noticeable buzz in the air with the activity across town. I would like to thank Sue Lankish and Paul Knopper for taking the lead on organizing several events for the team, as well as the Business Improvement Area, Firefighters, Archives, Heather Curling Club, and Kiwanis for their participation in all the events. During early December, we had holiday celebrations with the Mayor's Lobster Tree Lighting, Sparkle by the Sea, the Fireman's Parade, Skate with Santa, and many other activities. Retailers have said that this was their busiest December, with residents and visitors seeing the importance of buying local. With the assortment of businesses in town offering a variety of unique opportunities, there should be something available for anyone, any time of year. We would like to acknowledge 3 members of our volunteer fire department who received long service awards during their annual Christmas dinner in December. Jimmy Ross and Jimmy Craig, both with 25 years of service, and Robin Craig, who had 40 years of service. Special recognition was given to the longtime local fire marshal, Sam Walsh, who recently retired in the fall of 2022. Thank you to our dedicated volunteers for their continued support of St. Andrews and the surrounding area. Even without the snow, Public Works was kept busy in the month of December. As pretty as the Christmas lights add to our downtown, they require a fair amount of maintenance to ensure they are kept lit. In addition, there's a fair amount of preparation and getting equipment ready for snow removal operations. While we're delighted at the lack of snow, it means plows and sanders are removed from our vehicles so other work can be done. Although time consuming, it is the most efficient use of equipment. Public Works and the Utility Department continue to replace water meters in anticipation of consumption-based billing later this fall. The Youth Center has a slew of activities lined up over the winter, including gym activities, programs in conjunction with Big Brothers and Big Sisters programming, music jam nights, and board game evenings. Debbie Lord is looking for teen musicians who would be interested in forming a band, with local adults mentoring the participants. And I guess I would say these aren't beginners, these are participants who already know how to play instruments. In conclusion, on behalf of the staff, we look forward to working with our new counselors and citizens. Feel free to reach out and we can either assist you or bring your issues before council to be addressed. We look forward to the opportunity of collaborating with the larger community as we move forward with determination. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. As always, I know that summary does take some time, so we appreciate you updating and summarizing all of the staff reports that are submitted and attached. I don't really think it's relevant right now, but the financial report, obviously the budget for this year has not officially been approved, or do we have any timing of when that will be done?
I actually got word earlier today that they anticipate they'll all be approved by the end of this week. So we're hoping to hear from them soon.
Thank you. And then that will, from there, that'll have us a budget that we can work off. So appreciate that, Mr. Spear. Is there any questions on the staff report from any member of council? Okay, seeing none. So thank you very much, Mr. Spear. I will be looking for a mover to accept the staff reports as presented. Could I have a mover, please? Got Councillor Heenan and seconded by Councillor Neal. I'll call the question. All in favor of accepting staff reports, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's everybody. So that has been accepted. Thank you, Mr. Spear. I do appreciate that. And please pass that on to the rest of the staff as well. It's good to make sure that the public and council knows what's happening at all the facilities and all the employees. So we are going to get into the introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions. At this point, I will pass it over to Deputy Mayor Akaji.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson and council. My first one is, or my only one, is FA 230106. And it is the CPI staff wages increases for 2023. Annually, over the last 18 years, I can't read it. The Council of the Town of St. Andrews have matched the consumer price index increases for staff over staff wages. Over the last 5 years, the average increases have been 2.3%. However, with the recent inflation pressures that have taken place, CPI rates have increased higher than the 5%, hitting 7.45% in November of 2022. Please see the attached staff report and background information for additional details. Staff is asking the direction of the council on the CPI interest for staff for 2023, knowing that the purchasing power of their salaries depletes with adjustments. So our motion is this: that Council of the Town of St. Andrews sets the CPI staff wages increases for 2023 at 6%. And I so move this, Your Worship.
All right, we have a seconder just to get that out. We'll begin discussion. We got Councillor Heenan. Okay, so just again to bring everyone up to speed, this was a motion that was before council before the holidays, but council wanted to wait until all members of council were in their seats, so all 9 councillors. So thank you to the past and original council, I guess you'd say original 6, for including the other 3, so we could have it on the table. So at this point, we're going to open up for comments. Everyone's aware of the CPI and the increases that are out there, but it is up for debate. So council, does anyone have any comments on this motion? Okay, see, Councillor Blanchard.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I know we had a brief discussion before Christmas, and I believe what was budgeted for, if I remember back, was about 5% is sort of what staff and the administrator or whatever had budgeted for, at about 5%. And I know there was discussion around 6 or maybe even a little bit higher based on the CPI. For me, and again, I understand that staff wages have been tied to CPI for some time. Everybody I think in our community has experienced over the last year the impact of inflation and essentially the depletion of your purchasing power. But it just felt like 6% was a little bit higher than what most are experiencing in the community. just speaking from experience, in the federal public sector, about 4.5% is the ask right now. A lot of us are in the community work at the biological station. That's sort of what we're in negotiations for, and we'll be lucky if we get anywhere close to that. But so for me, I think just my comfort level is a little bit lower than 6. I'm probably in around the 4.5 to 5%, recognizing that they are non-unionized and really things have been tied to CPI. And I don't think we necessarily want to go away from that right now, but 6% maybe is a little bit high for me. So I'd be more comfortable around the 4.5 to 5%, recognizing that this was an extraordinary year in terms of inflationary pressures, but those are likely to come down in the next over the next year or so, at least we hope anyway. So those are just my comments, and I'd be interested to hear how the rest of council feels.
Did you want to formally amend it, or do you want to hear what other members of council do? And I'll come
I'd
back
like
to
to
you?
hear what others have to say. I could be swayed if everyone on council is more comfortable at 6, then I could certainly, I wouldn't be worth amending at that point, but I'd be interested to hear what others have to say before putting anything forward.
Thank you. I believe I saw Councillor Ware's hand first, then Councillor Hurdle. Councillor Ware, I don't know if you're frozen. Nope.
I think he's on
Just gotta
mute.
get off mute. There he is.
Anyway, the situation we're in is, it's certainly a time of great uncertainty which way this is going to go. I was around in the 70s when we had the anti-inflation board and interest rates of 16% and all those types of things. So I wouldn't hazard a guess what's going to happen in the next year. I think we have to be fairly conservative, but at the same time, we have to recognize the pressure that's being put on households by the current wave of inflation. And the unfortunate thing with the CPI is it is a composite number, which may or may not apply to every household. And some of the items within the CPI, for instance, the price of fuel and that type of thing has gone up substantially. And some of the lower items may not even be affected at all, or doesn't affect some of the households at all. So I guess I'm in a point of great uncertainty. I think the country's in a point of great uncertainty as to what's going to happen in the next 12 months. And all I can say is we have to be very conservative. We have to be very mindful of the employees, and there's no magic bullet out there. That's my conclusion.
I agree. Great comments, Councillor Ware. I saw Councillor Hurdle next.
Yeah, I mean, I echo a lot of the comments that have been made. It's a very difficult time for a lot of families. I just, from my point of view, most workers in the private sector don't get a wage increase of this kind based on CPI, myself included, although I'm definitely not the standard of this by any stretch of the imagination. So, Mr. Spear, has matching wage increases with inflation been a matter of policy, or is it just a preference of council?
I guess a preference, both. It's been a preference of council, but that's been in practice for so long that isn't a formal policy. I can say that.
I wonder if possibly it should be. Like, it's something we could possibly resolve moving forward.
That's at the will of council. There's good and bad with it both. And for instance, a year like this year, that St. Andrews has been extremely lucky that our tax assessment bases have risen dramatically over the last few years. So, we can afford it, meaning that it's not going to be a horrible burden on the town, but other communities will be struggling that the assessment base might not have arisen as quickly. And so it's good to always put it back in council's hands. What tends to happen is council discusses it in the fall with the budget. And if they come up with a safe figure and CPI is at or below that figure, then it usually doesn't come back to the council table. They'll just tell me to go ahead and increase the pace accordingly. But again, that was in the 2 to 3% years, not at 7.5% like we're experiencing now.
Yeah, I guess just my final comment on that would be, the CPI is a nebulous number. It fluctuates. A lot of the items that make up the CPI go up and down. It's not really necessarily a constant. So my concern with matching it is this is unprecedented time. And like Councillor Blanchard said, I think I would be okay with making an amendment to 5% circumstance.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments, Councillor Earl. I do see Councillor Heenan's hand as well.
Yes, your worship, I would be content with making a motion to change it to 5%, and we could discuss from there.
Okay, so we have a mover to amend the motion with the same wording, just from 6% to 5%. Could I have a seconder for that? I've got Councillor Neal that has seconded that, so I'm starting to get a little taste of quorum here that it looks like 5% over 6. Does anybody care to debate it another way than from 5? I guess would be the thing, just for efficiency of the meeting. Councillor Gubishal, I saw your hand. Wouldn't want to shut anyone down.
Thank you, Worship. Just quickly, I think we have a Cracker Jack staff. Many of them could move to private sector jobs where there's a lack of, where people are screaming for good people, and we have good people. And I think for 6%, we're doing pretty well. So I would support the CAO's recommendation of 6% increase for staff. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. So what I'll do is I will, unless anyone's got anything new to add, I will call the question on the amendment, and then we have to go back and actually approve it at that point. So that's just to amend it. So I'll see if people prefer 5 or 6% at this particular time, if that makes any sense. So we have a mover and a seconder for the motion that council, the town of St. Andrews, sets the CPI staff wage increases for 2023 at 5%. So all in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, anyone opposed? There's Councillor Gubishal and Councillor Harland as well. So by a vote, if I got it right, a vote of 7-2, the new motion would be set at 5%. Is there anything new that anyone would like to add? Otherwise, I will call the question now that it's been amended. Okay, I do not need a mover and a seconder, correct, Mr. Nopper? We're all good from the original, so I just can call the question. Okay. All in favor of that the council, the town of St. Andrews sets the CPI staff wage increases for 2023 at 5%, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and those opposed? And once again, a vote of 7-2. Mr. Nopper, you did note the nays. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, council. That's a good debate to start as a group of 9, and we did it in fairly efficient fashion. So thank you. And a lot of people weighed in. At this point, we're going to go to Councillor Blanchard for Public Works.
Thank you, Your Worship. So reference number PW 221207. Subject is street name request for Van Horne Garden Home Subdivision. So under bylaw 69, subdivision bylaw for the town of St. Andrews, section 5 states, name of streets in a subdivision are subject to the approval of council. Streets in town have themes of British royalty or of historic significance within the town of St. Andrews. The developer, Mr. Charlie Bourgeois, has requested that the street name for the Van Horne Garden Home subdivision be Adeline Lane. Miss Lucy Adeline, or Addie Van Horne, was the daughter of Sir William Van Horne and was well respected in St. Andrews for her contributions to the community. So the motion before council is that council approves the street name Adeline Lane as per bylaw number 69, a subdivision bylaw for the town of St. Andrews for the Van Horne Garden Home subdivision at the corner of Bar Road and Mowat Drive, and I so move.
I have a seconder for that one. I've got Councillor Bennett. Okay, we're open for debate. This is one that we tabled before. Staff did go back to the developer to confirm if they would still like to use the name based on the debate, and the developer still would like to use the name. So I will open this one up to debate as well. Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say thank you very much to Mr. Knopper for presenting the information as you did in the council package. This is a tremendous amount of work that went into that, and I do appreciate it. There are a couple of options that are presented at the end of them, and I'd like to see both explored if possible.
Okay, so are you proposing to table it again?
Well, I guess if we can't move on those options before, I guess.
Okay. Do you want to speak to those options a little bit, Mr. Knopper, just for the benefit of everyone?
Thank you, Your Worship. So for the public knowledge, so in discussions to bring forward from the last tabled session, there was concern about telling the story about the Canadian Pacific Railway and some of the issues that surrounded the Indigenous peoples and the treatment of Chinese immigrants. So a couple of recommendations that were put forward to council would be with the development of the trail system and upcoming trail signage, perhaps acknowledgement of the issues with the building of the Canadian Pacific Railway could be developed in place along with other trail education for the public information. As well, the other discussion or the other recommendation was we could work with representatives of Ministers Island to create an educational information package that could be made available to the public to discuss the issues and learning opportunities. So potential locations where information can be found, the Welcome Center, Town Hall, and the public library.
So just to clarify, Councillor Hurdle, you would like to see with this motion that those go along hand in hand with it, is that correct?
Right, so I don't imagine it's be significant enough. I don't think we could amend it.
No, I wouldn't say that'd be just a staff follow-up. Councillor Harlan.
I just wanted to clarify that what we're still recommending in the motion is that the road be named Adeline Lane, but with these provisions.
Correct.
Okay.
Those would be follow-up actions for education.
Okay. If I could just speak to that, I really like those options in terms of the education. I think over and above naming the road Adeline Lane, I think that should happen regardless. So I really like those options. Mr. Knopper, I think that was those are really great suggestions in terms of creating awareness and information to the public.
Thank you, Councillor Harland. So anyone else? So again, it's a friendly amendment. Staff will follow up on those action items and let us know if there's any further support from council required. Okay, seeing none, I will call the question then. All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Worship.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that has been carried. At this point, we're now moving ahead to Councillor Gumashell for Recreation and Community Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. On my register's reference number RCS 230107, submitted by myself, and the subject is Trail Advisory Committee Community Member Appointment. And the background reads: the Trail Advisory Committee of the Town of St. Andrews would like to recommend for appointment by council Mr. Mark Houle. Mr. Houle has a keen interest in trails, is an active member of the community, and could provide a community perspective on trails. Provided is a bio from Mr. Houle. Mark moved to St. Andrews 2 years ago in the depths of COVID after many years of living in Toronto. Despite having family and friends in Fredericton, the unmatched lifestyle and environment of our beautiful town were too much to pass up. He is an avid biker, hiker, and runner, and loves the Van Horne Trail and other active infrastructure in St. Andrews, and wants to be a part of improving it. Mark is currently working with Councillor Gumashell, that's me, on a website for the Van Horne Trail and the Paddlefest Wharf to Wharf race. The motion reads that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews appoints Mark Houle to the Trail Advisory Committee for a term of 2 years, and I would make that motion, Your Worship.
The seconder for that one. Okay, Councillor Neal, and quickly, any discussion on this one? I know Mark as well, and he's a positive individual with a pile of energy. We're very lucky to have him. He was one of our COVID allocators, and he's been a wonderful addition to our community. So if I'm not seeing anything, I will call the question. Maybe I biased that a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's everybody that has been carried. So congratulations to Mark. And at this point, we're going to jump ahead to Councillor Heenan for planning and economic development. And you're on mute.
You're on mute.
I'm sure you're reading very well, but you're on mute.
I did a good job of starting that off. Your worship and council, it's PED 220710. Amendment MP 20-02-01 to the Town of St. Andrews Secondary Municipal Plan, MP 20-02 for PIDs 01320035 and 1505489 256 and 260 Water Street for Bridle Path International Incorporated, discontinuation of the process. The background is the Town of St. Andrews has been working through the processes of Amendment MP 20-02-01 to the Town of St. Andrews Secondary Municipal Plan, MP 20-02 for the PIDs of 01320035 and 1505489 at 256 and 260 Water Streets from Bridle Path International Incorporated. The proponents are seeking an amendment to allow for the development of a 12.2 meter, 4-story, 36-unit mixed-use apartment complex. The following steps would need to be taken as part of the Community Planning Act process. Public presentation, July 18, 2022. First reading of Amendment MP 20-02-01, July 18, 2002. Obtain views of the Public Advisory Committee, August 17, 2022. Call for public hearings of objections, August 15, 2022. Second reading, September the 20th, 2022. Call for public hearing of objections, October 17th, 2022. Third and final reading. On November the 7th, 2022, Council discussed the October 17th, 2022 public hearing of objections, to which instruction was provided to Mr. Rocca to limit the asks for amendments or variances and to come back to Council with a new proposal. On December the 20th, 2022, Mr. Rocca provided a letter to Council indicating that he will no longer be pursuing the project, and you can see the letter attached for further details. The action and the motion is whereas Bridle Path International Incorporated has withdrawn its amendment MP 20-02-01 to the Town of St. Andrews Secondary Municipal Plan MP 20-02 for exemptions under HBD Section 2.1.2.6A, B, and C for PIDs of 01320035 and 1505489 at 256 and 260 Water Street. It is therefore resolved that the secondary municipal plan amendment process be discontinued. Your worship, I so move.
Thank you very much. And can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Harlan, do anyone want him to read it again? So we'll open it up. We'll open it up for discussion. But again, this is a request from the developer themselves. So any discussion? Councillor Gumashel.
Thank you, Worship. I had some comments on this that I was going to read as concerns at the end, but I can certainly read it now.
Whichever you prefer. The floor is yours at either time.
Okay, I'll read it now then. Thank you. Thank you, Worship. Please let the record show that I'm disappointed that Mr. Rocca has withdrawn his efforts to place a large apartment building on the site of the old gas station owned by Mr. Holmes downtown. I did have some concerns about the aesthetics of the building not exactly matching the general theme downtown. However, I feel that with some minor changes, the project could have and should have come to fruition. The boisterous complaints of Mr. Greenway and the other concerned citizens are disappointing, to say the least. Municipal plans are just that, plans, not laws or commandments, and the best made plans can be changed when such an excellent opportunity for growth comes along. We need housing, more people living downtown to make our community a vibrant, year-round place to live. And those are my comments on this. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gumashel. Anyone else? Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship. I echo Councillor Gumashel in some of his comments. I really feel bad that we've not gotten this project. I really feel bad that the people did not want to meet with Mr. Rocca. I feel very disheartened that there were people who said they hadn't signed the petition and their names was on it. I feel very, very sad for our community that we ended up in this position. I would like to say publicly that I appreciate Mr. Rocca for coming forth and trying to do business with our town. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Anyone else? All right, then I will call the question. All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is everybody. Just make sure no one nay. Okay, that is everybody that has been. But yes, just want to recognize Councillor Heenan, especially your last comment, that it was a lot of time and effort put in by Mr. Rocca in a potential development for this community. It did obviously have some varying opinions, both yay and nay for the particular project. But the fact that he put that much time and effort and thought into investing in our community, unfortunately, at the end of the day, council made a decision in relation to the secondary municipal plan and zoning bylaw. But that doesn't go without noticing his effort and commitment. And I hope he looks to this community in the future to maybe find a pathway of a project. Maybe it's not that location, maybe it is. Maybe it's somewhere else in the community, but continues to find investment in our community, as I know he has a lot of experience in it. So thank you very much, Councillor, for going through that process. And I will also acknowledge that some members of council actually did take probably a little bit of abuse at times in that process, unfortunately. And I want to recognize all of your commitment to doing the best job you possibly can and being impartial for the town of St. Andrews. Okay, the next one I'm going to declare a conflict for, but I just wanted to remind, I guess it'd be reminding Councillor Heenan that we're going to go number 3, then number 2. So at this time, I'm going to turn my mic off and Cameron, pass it over to Deputy Mayor Akerjee.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Would you continue on?
Yes.
Couldn't hit my mute button.
All right. Council, PED 220612, Amendment Z22-02 to the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw Z22-01 for the 302 Mowat Drive, third and final reading. The Town of St. Andrews has received a rezoning request for 302 Mowat Drive, Compass Housing Incorporated at PID 013255521 is seeking a rezoning from the tourist commercial zone to multiple residential 2 zone for the purposes of developing a 42-unit apartment complex. The following steps need to be completed before the rezoning is approved. Public presentation was held on June the 20th, first reading June 20th of 2022, obtained views of the Planning Advisory Committee July 20th, 2022, public hearing of objections July the 4th, 2022, public hearing of objections October 17th, 2022, second reading November 1, 2022, and the third reading would be this evening. The action is, Deputy Mayor, that council grants leave for the third and final reading to the zoning bylaw for amendment Z22-02 to the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw Z22-01 for Compass Housing Incorporated at PID 013255521 302 Mowat Drive to move from tourist commercial zone to multi-residential 2 zone. I so move it, Deputy Mayor.
Sorry to jump in.
Yes, did I miss
Deputy
something?
Mayor, well, yeah, there's a bit of a point of order here. So it's going to be a little bit confusing, but actually the motion at the bottom of the page should be the first one to do. It's because the development agreement should be approved before all the other steps. And so if you do it the other way, you've approved it. And then if you don't do develop, that's your only tool to enforce the development agreement is if you won't do the rezoning. So if council's okay with the development agreement, then we can proceed with the next 2 things.
All right, so Mr. Spear, for clarification, I'm to read the second motion first. Is that correct, Mr. Spear?
So, and you'll read the second motion first, but then you'll jump back to page 85 and read the rezoning and then, or sorry, the municipal plan amendment, and then do the rezoning as the final step.
Oh, gee. All right, I'm reading the motion on PED 220612. The motion that council signs into a development agreement with Compass Housing Incorporated for PID 013-25521, 302 Mowat Drive as per section 5.9 of the Community Planning Act. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan, and thank you, Mr. Spear, for jumping in there. I was going to mention that as the mayor had mentioned it before. But anyway, I need a seconder for this motion. Could I please have a seconder? Councillor Gumashell, I see your hand up, so now we can discuss it.
And council staff thinks this is a strong development agreement. But just to be perfectly aware that if you approve it tonight, then it moves forward as is. So I'm hoping you've taken great time to read through it and are happy with it. And if you support it, that's fantastic. But this is kind of your opportunity to either support it or table it, that it's harder to amend later if you go through all these steps tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Your deputy mayor started to interrupt.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Spear, for the background. It's very important to have. So if there's no further communication or discussion, then I will move to the question. All those in favor of this motion being passed, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone not in favor? So it's carried unanimously. All right, now count, Mr. Spear, do we go back to 85 and then back to this, the third and final rezoning?
That's correct. So the municipal plan amendment needs to follow next.
Okay,
Deputy Mayor,
Councilor
thank you.
Heenan, would you please go back to page 85 and read the that one? Thank you.
I am there, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much.
I apologize first off because I thought we were going to do number 3 and then go back to 2. So I apologize for the confusion. Anyway, we're off. PED 220611, amendment MP 20-06 to municipal plan MP 20-01, PID 01325521, 302 Mowat Drive, Compass Housing Incorporated, third and final reading. The background, Deputy Mayor, the town of St. Andrews received a rezoning request that requires a municipal plan amendment for 302 Mowat Drive, Compass Housing Incorporated at PID 013255521 is seeking a municipal plan amendment to the generalized future land use map to move from commercial designation to residential designation for the purpose of developing a 42 apartment complex. The following steps have been completed in process. Public presentation, June 20th, 2022. First reading, June 20th, 2022. Obtained views of the PAC committee, July 2022. Public hearing of objections, July the 4th, 2022. Public hearing of objections, October 17th, 2022. Second reading, November 17th, 2022, and third reading. Now, Mr. Spear, do I go back to the motion on the other page?
No, that motion right below is perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Motion that council grants leave for the third and final reading to the municipal plan amendment MP 20-06 to the town of St. Andrews municipal plan MP 20-01 for Compass Housing Incorporated at PID 01325521, 302 Mowat Drive to move from commercial designation to residential designation on the generalized future land map. I so move this, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Heenan. A seconder, please. And Councillor Harland. So, any comments, council? All right, I'm not seeing any. Mr. Nopper, are you seeing any? Just in case I miss anybody.
No, you're good to go, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, then I'll call for the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
Okay, and any opposed? So it's carried unanimously. Now, Mr. Spear, do I read the bylaw?
You, Deputy Mayor, you just have to read the bylaw by title. Everything's been read prior, so just by title for both this
Okay,
one
so-
and for the next one if moved forward.
So do both at the same time?
No, do the one that is MP 2006, because then it has to go back to the
Do
motion.
the third one and then come back here. All
Correct.
right, thank you very much. Sorry for the confusion. I'm bouncing around. A bylaw number MP 20-06. A bylaw to amend bylaw number 20-01, being a municipal plan bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. Be it enacted by the council of the town of St. Andrews as follows. And number one, bylaw number MP 20-01, the municipal plan bylaw for the town of St. Andrews is amended by changing the designation as shown on the generalized future land use map attached to the said bylaw as Schedule A thereof for the lands shown on Schedule 1 attached hereto and forming part hereof for commercial designation. From commercial designation to residential designation. So this was read on the first time, the 20th day of June 2022, and read the second time on the 21st day of November 2022. And this is the reading the third time. And this is, I don't know what day it is, sorry guys. For the 16th day of January 2023. And it's so read, correct?
You're correct.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you can
Okay,
move now to the
Now we go to
rezoning,
the
yeah.
third, what you had done before, and then we'll go back.
All right,
One,
Thank
on page
you.
89. Right,
thank you, Deputy Mayor.
you're welcome.
PED 220612, Amendment Z 22-02 to the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw Z 22-01 for 302 Mowat Drive, third and final reading. The Town of St. Andrews has received a rezoning request for 302 Mowat Drive, Compass Housing Incorporated at PID 013-25521, is seeking a rezoning from the tourist commercial zone to multiple residential 2 zone for the purposes of developing a 42-unit apartment complex. The following steps need to be completed before rezoning is approved. Public presentation, June 20th, 2022. First reading, June 20th, 2022. Obtain the views of the PAC committee, July 20th, 2022. Public hearing of objections, July the 4th, 2022. Public hearing of objections, October 17th, 2022. Second reading on November 21st, 2022. And the third reading will be tonight. Okay, the action, Deputy Mayor, is that council grants leave for the third and final reading to the zoning bylaw amendment Z 22-02 to the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw Z 22-01 for Compass Housing Incorporated at PID 013-25521. 302 Mowat Drive to move from tourist commercial zone to multi-residential 2 zone. I, Deputy Mayor, move this.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hurdle, I saw your hand up first. All right, is there any discussion on this? Okay, not seeing any, then I will call for the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And contrary minded? So it's
Yay.
carried. Oh, was there a contrary?
No, I said yay.
Oh, sorry, carried unanimously. Now, Mr. Spear, I read the bylaw.
Correct. You can read it by title or you can read it in full, your choice.
Okay, by title. How do I read it by title? Because I read the whole little.
Deputy Mayor, all you have to do is read it by title and then say it has been passed, read for third reading on this date.
Okay, so I don't have to read that number 1 then. Is that what
No.
you're saying? Okay, thank you very much. I will shorten it up. Bylaw number Z22-02. A bylaw to amend bylaw number Z22-01, being zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews, and being enacted by the council of the town of St. Andrews as follows. And I have to just read number 1, and then it was read the first time on the 20th day of June 22nd, read the second time on the 21st day of November 2022, and it's now read the third time on the 16th day of January 2023. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, for.
Is the mayor back now? Thank you very much.
I am. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, for covering. We can touch on that a little bit later under our comments, but we will move to the last motion. But I'll pass this over as a new counselor. I know it's in a portfolio, but it's new business. So I was wondering if a new counselor would like to jump to page 112 and read this motion for us. Anyone? 112? I'll pick one of you. I'll pick one of you.
Trust me, he will.
All right, I see a hand from Councillor Harlan. Not that I put any pressure on there.
Just a little. All right, so it's reference number FA 230107. Council chambers upgrades. With the expanded council and the need to update the council chambers, the staff is seeking to provide proper chairs, yes, update the tables and purchase more microphones and cameras for recording the meetings. However, in the rush of the budget period and local government reform, it was overlooked in the 2023 budget. Staff is seeking $10,000 to accomplish the above. On the included staff report, we have identified 3 areas of savings that we are already aware of. So the motion is that council authorizes the unbudgeted capital expenditure of $10,000 for upgrades to the council chambers. Oh,
Councillor Harlan, just say.
Thank you very much.
sorry, Mr. Knopper.
Councillor Harlan, when you read the motion, then you say I so move. So you'd be the first
Oh.
motion.
I so move.
There you go. Thank you very much, Councillor Harlan. The seconder is Councillor Ware, and we will open this up for discussion. I think everyone sees in the council chambers, it's quite a mismatch of equipment and chairs and everything right now. Thank you, staff, for finding savings. One more call. Any comments or questions? All right, I will call the question, and all in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? No one opposed. That motion has been carried. We are into question period right now. Mr. Knopper, has there been any questions or anyone online that wants to raise their hand to you?
Through your worship, I've received no email correspondence. I will put it out to the attendees. Attendees, if you have a question for council, please raise your hand now. Last call attendees, if you have a question for council, please raise your hand now. No comments or questions, yours.
Thank you very much. So we are now into councillor and deputy mayor's comments. Would any member of council or deputy mayor like just raise your hand if there's anything you'd like to say? This is an opportunity to make general comments on anything in the meeting or anything you'd like to promote within the community. Typically is what we see in this case. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Councillor Heenan.
You know, I always have the last word. Anyway, I just would like to say a formal welcome to the new councillors. We're very pleased to have you join us, and it's a pleasure to be working with you. Secondly, one of our mandates was to confirm or have affordable housing in our community, and tonight's a big step for this council. It's been a long haul to get this taken care of, and it fell under my portfolio. It was tough at times, but I'm telling you, we did it, and I'm very proud of this group. And I would just like to say, Mayor Henderson, it's a pleasure. The work is well worth it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan, for those comments. Any other member of council? Okay, I myself just wanted to actually echo your exact comments, Councillor Heenan. So I will start off by Compass Housing. First of all, I haven't declared a conflict on it, but it doesn't mean that sitting out. It doesn't mean that I don't recognize the contributions that Compass Housing themselves did. So the Bevingtons and Ingersolls to go through the entire process. There's a lot of different opinions in this town. That's what makes it strong, but it also can make it challenging. And the fact that they stayed the course and came committed to a project, and one of the few developers that we've seen to date that would actually propose to lock in at a price to guarantee it that it is affordable. I think that they need to be recognized because it's a pile of work for them, and their work's just going to get busier as this enters into the development agreement. But it's great to have people that have ties or live in St. Andrews in this case, that care about the community and want it to make a difference. And on that note, just like you said, Councillor Heenan, I want to recognize staff and council on actually addressing this. This is actually the third agreement that this council has done, really over just a year period, really, where I know we're a little over a year, but we had to get orientated. That is the most development that I think has happened in this community in a long time. And it hasn't been an easy process, but your commitment to why you all said when you ran, I watched on the CHGO interviews, all of you said that you wanted to make a difference in housing, and you certainly are living up to what you promised. So I wanted to recognize you and the hard work of staff. This takes a pile of work behind the scenes, a pile of discussions and figuring out process and all that stuff. So to not recognize your commitment to what you said you were going to do when you ran, I don't think would be appropriate. So thank you to all of you. And for people that are struggling in our community, there is a reason to be excited now. More rentals are on the way in St. Andrews. And people, whether you be a senior that's having trouble living here, whether you be someone on an income, on a seasonal job downtown and maybe the service industry, or whether you be a single parent that is finding it hard to continue to take your kids to Vincent Massey Elementary School, the cost of housing, there's a reason to be optimistic and hopeful that things will change in the future. And again, I just wanted to recognize all of you for that. The second thing I want to recognize, the same as Councillor Heenan, Councillor Bennett, Councillor Harlan, and Councillor Ware, thank you for jumping in here, getting involved in the very first regular meeting, participating, adding value. I'm already a strong believer in what I've seen over the first month, that this reform and adding 3 new councillors is just going to make this council stronger. So we look forward to continuing to work. We didn't all get along tonight. We voted 7-2 for something, but that's democracy, right? So I'm really happy that you guys all joined and entered debate and voted. So thanks, and we're looking forward to continuing to work and take a look at all of our strategic priorities and make sure that as a group we're all aligned to what we want to accomplish as a council. That's it for me, longer than I normally say at Mayor's comments. We do have an item for closed session. So at 8:06 p.m., I'm going to be looking for a mover that council goes into closed session as per the Local Governance Act, section 68(1)J, which is a labor and employment matter, including the negotiation of collective agreements. Could I have a mover to go into closed session? I've got Councillor Gumashel. Could I have a seconder to go? The Councillor Neal. All in favor of going to closed session, please signify by saying aye. And that is everybody. We'll give a moment to shut down technology and then we'll begin the closed session. Thank you. Sorry, you got to do that out of closed.
Go ahead.
I'll be looking for a motion to come out of closed session. I've got Councillor Blanchard and seconded by Councillor Heenan. All in favor of coming out of closed session, please signify by saying aye. Is everybody. So at this particular time, I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Akaji, everyone knows I always give her the first one, and then seconded by, hands again there, Councillor Blanchard got it up first. So all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. If we can do this every